Well, if your idea of the perfect date night is a very underwhelming Captain America movie that doesn't have Steve Rogers or most of his supporting cast, you're in luck, because the MCU's latest offering might be right up your alley. But if getting your money's worth or having time well spent is a concern, you and your significant other may be left wondering why you didn't just stay home and stream Invincible Season 3 on Valentine's Day instead. At least that show has a decent romance, just not in the first 2 seasons. Anyway, Captain Black Falcon American Brave New World Order whatever the f*** is finally here after being delayed and rewritten and reshot so many damn times that it might as well be starring Rachel Ziegler and 7 horrifying CG dwarfs. Given the rollout of this movie, Disney and Marvel probably have about as much confidence in it as they do in the movie that actually does have those things, and having sat through it now, it's not hard to see why. I'm not saying this is the worst MCU film of all time or anything, schlock like the Marvels is still worse than this, but it's not good. If I'm being really generous, I might rate it on the lower end of mid, which is really not what the studio needed this thing to be, considering the budget reportedly ballooned so high with all the endless retooling of it that the film probably needs to make Deadpool and Wolverine money just to break even. Call me a negative Nancy if you want, but I don't think it's getting anywhere close to numbers like that. Now, before we get to the review, I think it'll help to understand how this movie ended up the way it did, because holy moly did it have a rocky road getting here. This is the first Captain America movie where Sam Wilson has the shield now after Steve gave it to him in Avengers Endgame, with the lead-in to it being the Falcon Winter Soldier Disney Plus show from holy shit, 3 years ago now? A show which was not great, did some frustrating things with existing characters, did a poor job introducing new ones, and these days is mostly remembered for one thing in particular.
You've got to do better, Senator.
Yeah, that. So keeping in mind that that show is required homework if you want to understand a lot of what happens in this movie, then we've got the troubled production. The original production isn't that interesting, though I imagine there were some costly delays because of the pandemic. Where it really gets interesting, and where it gets downright silly, is afterward. Because reportedly, the test screenings went over so badly that Marvel went back to the drawing board and reshot big chunks of the film, but then it still tested badly, so they reshot more of it, it tested badly again, and it just snowballed like that for so long that they basically reshot the entire movie 2 or 3 times at this point. And then, judging by the final product, they cobbled together some kind of Frankenstein version of it using various pieces from all these different iterations. Another issue is the shifting ideologies. This movie was conceived before the higher-ups at Marvel realized that they might have been screwing the pooch a little bit in the last few years, and maybe they needed to pivot away from what they'd been doing for most of Phase 4 and get back to the business of, you know, making money. Now, I'm not sure at what point in the production that shift happened, but you can tell they were trying, in their own very special way, to right the ship. Eventually, they settled on the idea to get back to what worked before and make the movie a grounded political thriller in the vein of Winter Soldier, one of the MCU's best films. Good idea, right? Sure. The problem is, 1, we don't know how late in the process they made that decision and how many rounds of reshoots they had to steer the film in that direction, not enough of them if you ask me, and 2, making the movie political is kind of a risky move considering what most of the writers currently working for Marvel think that means.
You've got to do better, Senator.
Yeah, that. A while back there were all these reports about how one version of the film had a lot of racial stuff, with Sam lecturing the audience about racism and tolerance or whatever. Thankfully, if that was true, someone thought better of it and it's no longer in the movie. But what they ended up with instead is the what could this metaphor possibly mean narrative of a black man representing America fighting a morally compromised president who turns into a giant red monster. So yeah, they technically made a political thriller in that there are politics in the movie, but they're kind of dumb. And that's just the start of it, I'm afraid, because once you get past the politics, there's a lot of other issues here. For example, what the f*** is the Red Hulk doing in a Captain America movie? Shouldn't he be used in a different project as a foil for, oh, I don't know, the Hulk? That's the second problem. This movie tries to pull the same stunt Doctor Strange 2 did. Multiverse of Madness wasn't so much a Doctor Strange sequel as it was a WandaVision sequel. Similarly, Brave New World isn't really a Captain America sequel, it's an incredible Incredible Hulk sequel that just happens to star Sam Wilson instead of the Hulk. It's a movie where the Marvel Brain Trust realized that they had a bunch of dangling plot threads left over from other projects that they wanted to tie up, so they threw them all in a big pot and called it Cap 4. And it shows. The character with the most coherent character arc in the film isn't even Sam Wilson, it's Thunderbolt Ross, because they're following up on the events of the Ed Norton Hulk film. And Sam does kind of, sort of, not really have an arc of his own, but it was clearly one of the victims of the multiple rounds of reshoots, and having Falcon Winter Soldier as a foundation didn't help it either. Then there's the third problem, which is that there was obviously never any clear vision for what the film should be. And you can tell because that vision kept changing as they reshot more and more of it. We're talking about a movie that was such a cluster behind the scenes that there are actors who were in the film originally but were cut out via reshoots, actors who were not in the film originally but ended up with significant roles in it via reshoots, and at least one actor who was originally going to play one character but post rewrites and reshoots is now playing a completely different character but who still goes by the same name as the original character. Holy gods! What a mess. So finally, we arrive at a version of Brave New World that Marvel thought was at least releasable, for some reason, which is trying to be an Incredible Hulk sequel without the Incredible Hulk, a Captain America sequel without the Captain America that made those movies work, a follow-up to an ill-conceived and poorly received Disney Plus show, a quick fix for leftover plot threads from the Eternals of all things, a political thriller written by people whose idea of political commentary is sophomoric at the best of times, an action movie with the impossible task of following the action of several previous films it couldn't possibly live up to, and a movie that has to set up stuff for future MCU projects at the same time, which is a whole other can of worms altogether. That is a really tall order for the current crop of Marvel writers to pull off. And for the record, the script was credited to no less than 5 of them. All things considered, it's a f***ing miracle that this movie even turned out as good as it is. And it's not even that good! So, that movie review you were hoping I'd get to like 20 minutes ago. Short version, Brave New World is a big hot mess. Duh. It does have some positive aspects. The acting, generally, I liked. I was missing Chris Evans a lot, but I thought Anthony Mackie did an admirable job with what they gave him. Then you've got Harrison Ford, Carl Lumbly, Giancarlo Esposito. There's some really strong dramatic actors in there, and they are able to elevate some of this. There's some good scenes here and there because of these guys. There were some new characters I liked, though I did need to rack my brain for a minute to remember where Sam's new sidekick came from. Turns out he was a minor character in Falcon Winter Soldier who didn't really do anything in that show, but he gets some stuff to do here, and for what he is, he's alright. He doesn't have a character arc, maybe is a little bit too earnest and eager at first, but not in an annoying Kamala Khan way. They don't do anything stupid with him. He's capable and useful, and I ended up liking him. The Isaiah Bradley character brings some gravitas with him. Anthony Mackie has good chemistry with both these guys. Harrison Ford gets, frankly, more attention than I thought they'd give him, and that's not a bad thing. He's one of the best assets the movie has, and probably gets the best writing until the Red Hulk happens and it all falls apart. So overall, I do like the actors in this thing, except for one in particular who I thought was horrendously miscast. That would be our what the hell were they thinking Natasha Romanoff stand-in, because God knows we can't have an MCU movie without a girl boss these days. This woman stood out like a sore thumb. First of all, the character was pointless. You could cut her out and not lose a thing. Second, the role is so f***ing awkward. She's an Israeli-born ex-Black Widow who somehow wound up working for the US government. Holy shit, you'd think this person would be super interesting, but she's not. She does nothing. She's there to give exposition and to be an extra body in a few action scenes where she very unconvincingly throws around a bunch of men 3 times her size. That's it. And I'm sorry, but I don't know how the hell we're supposed to take this chick seriously for a second as some elite-level badass when she's the size of Bernadette from The Big Bang Theory and sounds like her too. She's like 4 feet tall, can't weigh more than 50 pounds soaking wet. My 18-month-old niece could kick this chick's ass. Come on! Some of the action is not terrible. Is it on the same level as the action in Winter Soldier or Civil War? No, not even close. Is it as fun as the action in Deadpool and Wolverine? No, not even close. It's a lot clunkier than any of those movies. But the aerial battles are okay. Some of these sequences are passable, at least when Bernadette isn't involved, though the bigger set pieces have to deal with some dodgy CG and some really awful green screen shots. And I'll say that when the movie is trying to be just a political thriller and not a million other things at the same time, that's when it comes the closest to working. There's this plot about someone being set up in an assassination attempt, there's a frame up and a mystery of who's really behind it, and this plot tended to have the best material because they weren't trying to get too fancy with it, they just wrote some simple dramatic beats and let the actors do their thing. I liked some of that. That's when it felt like a Captain America movie should feel. There's intrigue and a conspiracy. It is derivative of Civil War, but it wasn't bad. And if it had continued going in that direction, I think we'd be talking about a better movie. Maybe not a great movie, but a better movie. But instead, it goes off in a bunch of different directions, and the whole thing unravels pretty quickly. For instance, I'm not sure this movie ever really knew what to do with Sam. You'd think that a big part of his arc here would be about Sam learning how to be Captain America, figuring out how to do what he needs to do when he's not a super soldier. That's a logical story, a compelling story, but it's barely a thing here. When Ross tells Sam, "You're Captain America, but you're not Steve Rogers," that's a good moment, sure, but it's not what Sam is grappling with in this movie. Not really. It's mentioned a couple times, I think like twice in the entire film, but the story isn't about that at all. We never see him really struggling during these fight scenes because he's not a super soldier. Instead, they cheat the whole thing, saying that Sam got a vibranium suit from the Wakandans, so he's like a red, white, and blue Black Panther now because the suit compensates for his lack of powers. But he also has fight scenes when he's in street clothes and he can throw the shield as hard as a super soldier can without the suit augmenting him. So does Sam have powers or doesn't he? Is he a super soldier or not? I don't know. I don't think the movie knows. And holy shit, he does some things with that shield that are downright cartoonish, especially in the aerial battles where it's ricocheting off of missiles and planes and shit. There's one scene where there are these missiles bearing down on Sam, so he throws the shield at one of them. The missile explodes, and instead of the explosion sending the shield off in a new direction, it goes right through the missile in a straight line and hits the other two. Like, what the f***? Look, I know that shield has never exactly obeyed the laws of physics.
That thing does not obey the laws of physics at all.
But you need to at least try to make it believable. What they did with the shield here was just f***ing bonkers. And there is a little bit of Sam wondering how he can do this and what kind of Captain America he can be, but it's not done well because, again, the vibranium suit takes that load off, and he doesn't even seem to need the suit when he doesn't have it unless the story says otherwise. Basically, when Sam needs to have the power of a super soldier, he does, with or without the suit, and when Sam needs to be a non-powered normal dude for the story to work, he is, with or without the suit. There's no rhyme or reason to it, it's just whatever the story needs Sam's power level to be in order to move them to the next scene in the script, that's what it is. And weirdly enough, I don't think they knew what to do with the villain of the movie either, because he's not so much a big bad as he is a plot device the writers use to tie a lot of disparate story threads together. So they say he's manipulating all these events from the shadows, but when he finally shows up, he barely does anything. He only appears in a handful of scenes. He's supposed to be confined to one location, but he keeps randomly appearing in other locations like magic anytime the plot needs him to, and then the movie is just done with him. This supposed master manipulator gets captured like a jackass right before the climax, so the climax isn't even about him at all. I won't say who he is because that's a spoiler.
The leader is good, the leader is great. We surrender our will as of the state.
But it was a ridiculous waste of that actor and that character. And then we get to the Red Hulk of it all. Look, even in the comics I thought Red Hulk was lame, so I may not be unbiased here, but this was a bad idea executed badly. I don't know why he was all over the trailers because the Red Hulk is only a thing for like 10 minutes here. The big fight with Sam is not good and ends so anticlimactically it made me wonder why they even bothered with it in the first place. And what's more, it completely goes against how they previously told us Hulks were created. In the Avengers, they told us that Banner used gamma rays combined with a version of the super soldier serum, and Loath as I am to reference She-Hulk Attorney at Law for anything, in that show, Bruce said that him and Jen became Hulks because their bodies have a unique combination of genetic factors that allow them to process gamma radiation differently, and this was some incredibly rare 1 in a million thing. And yes, the intelligentsia found a way around that, but then Jen did her fourth wall breaking f***ery and made it so that never happened. And here, they create Red Hulk in a really stupid way that's totally different from either of those f***ing things. Here, all you need is gamma radiation that can be taken in pill form. You figure that one out. Now, if the MCU is just sweeping the She-Hulk show under the rug and forgetting it ever happened, more power to you. But you've got some major continuity gaps here, and it seemed like the writers of this movie either didn't know or worse, didn't care. And then, there's adamantium. I can't believe this is how they're introducing adamantium. What paint-sniffing clowns over at Marvel thought this was a good idea? This was nothing more than, it's been a few years since Eternals, we really need to do something with that f***ing celestial that rose out of the Indian Ocean. It's made of adamantium. Boom!
Is your idiot brain getting fucked by stupid?
Jesus f***ing Christ. Okay. Not only is that not where adamantium comes from, but the way they do this is so f***ing stupid. They say that adamantium is even more versatile than vibranium. More versatile than vibranium. Vibranium is already so f***ing versatile that it's basically magic. There is literally nothing it can't do. But watch out, y'all, there's a new kid in town, cause adamantium is even better. It can do even more stuff. I don't know how it could be better, but the movie tells us it is, and we're gonna have to take their word for it because guess what? We never even see the f***ing thing. Yeah. Adamantium is one of 2 framing devices the whole movie is built around, and it's never shown to us, it's never used for anything, it exists entirely off-screen. It's just something for characters to talk about and fight over. It's a bullshit MacGuffin they only used so they could create a plot around it, and that's it. So if you were hoping for a Wolverine cameo or a mention of Weapon X or something cool like that, don't. And when Wolverine does eventually show up, is he gonna have all these bullshit adamantium powers now, like the powers that vibranium gives the Black Panther? Because you just told us that adamantium can do all that stuff, but better. Do you see the corner they just wrote themselves into with this nonsense?
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for them.
If this was the start of a brave new world, then I want the old world back. And if the point of this movie was to make the case for Sam Wilson being the new Captain America, I think it was a failure. It didn't work. They didn't know what to do with him. They just slapped a bunch of shit together and had Sam tell the Red Hulk that he needs to do better. That's literally how he beats him.
You serious?
Not a good movie, guys. I left the theater feeling really meh about the whole thing, and it only gets worse the more I think about it. There are a handful of scenes that work, mostly because of the actors, but the script is dragged down by too many stupid ideas, taking the movie in too many stupid directions, too many rewrites, and too many re-edits trying to incorporate all those rewrites. And the end result is a clumsy, convoluted, disjointed mishmash of several different versions of the same movie all crammed into one, where the big MacGuffin driving the plot is something we never even see. The big villain behind the whole thing has little more than a cameo. Multiple scenes needed to tie the various plots together are very noticeably missing. A potentially interesting story for Sam Wilson is ruined and thrown out because the filmmakers couldn't decide if he has powers or not. Their attempts to tie up loose ends in the MCU just make the story worse, and their attempts to introduce new concepts for the future end up shooting those stories in the foot before they've even happened. It's really hard to imagine how the studio could have made a bigger mess of this film. Despite the never-ending rewrites and reshoots, this thing was just unsalvageable. Hopefully, this movie was the last vestige of the projects Marvel couldn't pivot soon enough to save before they started shifting gears. Best to just cut your losses, put it behind you, and move on. And with any luck, Kevin Feige will take Captain America Brave New World as a learning experience, because if there's one important takeaway from the movie, it's this.
You've got to do better, Senator.
You've got to step up.
Yeah. that. Thanks so much for watching. While you're here, ding that bell icon and follow all of my social media so you can always be notified when I upload new stuff. The links are down there. And this channel is a one-man operation. I do all this stuff myself, so help me out by smashing that like button, leaving a comment, sharing the video, hitting subscribe if you haven't already, and making sure you're still subscribed, because what really deserves to be told it needs to do better is the YouTube algorithm.
You've got to do better, Senator.
That's all for now. I'll be back with more soon. Take care, stay tuned, see you next time.